Welcome to Soonicorn Nation, a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs, brought to you by the Soonicorn Collective. My name is Mohammed Tariq, founder of Earth, and I have been an entrepreneur for the last 20 years.
My name is Jason Cheong, CFO of DataSwift, and I have been an entrepreneur for the last 15 years. The Soonicorn Collective is a peer-to-peer leadership and learning community for mature and growth stage entrepreneurs. While our in-person and live engagements are exclusively for members only, we believe that the knowledge gained and the lessons learned should be shared across the wider ecosystem and in society at large. And that's how this podcast was born. We hope these learnings will accelerate your entrepreneur journey and perhaps pave your way to becoming Malaysia's next Soonicorn.
The opinions, views, and content expressed on the Soonicorn Nation podcast are those of the entrepreneurs and guests featured, and do not reflect the official policies or positions of Proficio Consultants, Pinjana Capital, or the rest of the Soonicorn Collective. Today it is my pleasure to have Jason Cheong as my co-host and fellow entrepreneur. Our guest is Neil Cheong from Guide, an early-stage venture studio, venture education expert, and post-investment value creation advisory. Welcome, gents.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Jason, prior to joining DataSwift, you were involved in ecosystem building at MDEC, and you also were a startup scout for AWS. Can you tell us a bit about this period of your life?
I think I should prelude a little bit. So I was an auditor at PwC for 5 years. And then when I left, I got into the entrepreneurship scene and became a mentor somehow at Magic. And that's when I started to teach, bookkeeping, tax laws, how to go about that, because I find that it's very useful, especially when you're at bootstrapping. You kind of need to know all these basics. So what happened was 2 years in, I created a peer group model where I arrange and curate people of similar startup stage together, and then from there they can learn from each other. So I think that would be a faster way of learning compared to having a mentor, because your peers are much more closer to the ground, and they'll be able to, I would say, be more patient with you.
So you created the alpha version of Soonicorn Collective, I guess.
Well, I wouldn't say so. I mean, Soonicorn Collective, came from, speaking to our mentors, they came from a large, much more established formats compared to mine. I'm just a copycat.
So do you have any thoughts on former TikTok Malaysia CEO becoming the new CEO of MDEC?
Oh, well, that's kind of interesting because I used to work in MDEC back in 2018. So, but it was only for 8 months. I don't really know much about it. So, new CEO, I know a lot of people are saying that, things move a lot, but I wish him the best.
All right, great. So Neil, welcome to Soonicorn Nation. Can you tell us a bit about your background, especially your journey from running your own agency to Endeavor to Guide?
Sure. Thank you so much, Mo, for bringing me into this amazing podcast. I'm Neil. Currently running a early stage venture studio, turning into a program builder as well as an ecosystem builder. So my journey it's a little bit special. I didn't actually practice what I've studied in my master degree. So I've been a science student. So I graduated in marine geology actually.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, studying ancient climate reconstruction systems, especially in South China Sea. So right after I came back from China from my research, what I noticed that a lot of businesses in Malaysia wasn't very, I think, analytical in the way they've been doing the business. So the one thing that I realized that in my journey in readapting into back in the Malaysia market is to actually find something that I'm actually able to do. So one thing that is very obvious to me that I can write and also analyzing data. So digital marketing was a bit of a peak during that time in 2017 when e-commerce boomed. A lot of e-commerce entrepreneurs are spending a lot of money on ads. So using ads as a way to acquire sales is a very natural process, and back then it was very, very affordable to a lot. So we are seeing an ROAS of 1 to 20 right now is so low. So back in those days, there was a surge of a demand of somebody who can write and somebody who understand the creative means of actually getting more sales driving into commerce-based type businesses. So that is how the business was evolved from being a gig to a full-fledged digital marketing agency in offering everything from writing the creatives, deciding the graphics of it, and running the performance advertising component of the function. And soon after, that agency has quite a lot of inquiry regarding, hey, traditional e-commerce, commerce-based entrepreneurs are also looking for such a solution that can tell specifically how would a certain creative perform. And they were spending more budget and they can actually rationalize how those budget are turning into sales. So for one company, we scaled about around a handful of company in a matter of 6 months. So it get quite well in terms of traction, to the point that we are actually seeing how we're actually taking over the marketing function of all these companies. And that enters to my second chapter of my career back in Malaysia. So two of the clients were actually reaching out to me, said that, hey, we have actually outsourced the entire function. And what is very interesting is that when you sit on the marketing function, when you're seeing the entire the cost of marketing and translate to sales, you see both of the bottom part of the P&L, the cost structure of it, and also the top line. And then that's where we venture deeper into advisory. So for the first time, I can say, hey, if you continue burning this money, it's not going to make sales anymore. There's certain point of optimization in digital marketing you can do it. And there was one client in particular was venturing too fast into retail. So they thought that the unit economics of paying X amount of cost in marketing would actually convert into the same ratio in terms of advertising sales. So doing the retail, there's a lot of sunk costs in the facility of it, the setup of it, and the hiring and manning of the retail space. They've grown so fast, the P&L wasn't very healthy, and that was the first alarm I was telling the entrepreneur back then. So I think in a matter of 6 months, I think he decided, hey, we have to roll our shit backwards. I said, hey, Neil, can you really come in? Can you come in as an interim COO? You know the P&L more than any of the team does. Can you help me to resolve this issue? So I think the founder was very, very product-centric. I think he's great as a person to spot new opportunities in e-commerce. I think a lot better than e-commerce. I think towards right now, a lot of e-commerce founders are also mainly based on OEM. So he is great in spotting that kind of opportunity. So someone needs to go back into the back end of the office and take a look at all this financial health issues. So that's where me and my partner we decided to take a break because the agency model itself cannot be scaled. It's very tough. It's very manpower heavy. So I took a dive into this company, and he gave me a 6 months tenure. He said, "Hey Neil, can you turn this from red to black? So that would be your first task." So that's what I did. It wasn't a very pleasant experience. I think that also relate to what I soon realized in Endeavor. I think that's what a lot of private equity people are also doing. And right after that, there's another opportunity that popped up onto my table. Also, a former client wanted me to help him to transform the retail to be more performance trackable at the retail level. So it's actually a service-based chain store. It's nationwide. And so my first task was to actually make sense of the retail store level sales data, implement POS system, and drive a managerial decision. So it was run by a accountant as a business with majority saloon background staff. So there was a very clear middle management lack of capacity. So I was the first hire in making sense of all that, implement a solution, and tell them how they can actually scale for the next upcoming 2 or 3 retail store. So that's what we did. So we actually localized some of the pricing itself. And also a very short tenure, about 6 months, it promoted me into a general manager from a digital transforming manager. So right after that, I joined Endeavor. I always wanted to come back to the scene and become an entrepreneur myself. And I think getting into Endeavor, it's almost like my, practical MBA. So I need to soak enough knowledge and get to know a bit what high growth is all about. So Endeavor gave me that platform. So for that 3 years, I get exposed to, arguably, I think the second generation of entrepreneurs after, Mark Chang. So hanging around, being the fly on the wall, supporting the growth of this entrepreneur, being their account managers, being, I think, the facilitator and the coordinator and the connector of how these entrepreneurs were selected by Endeavor to the right mentor, matching them, taking down the notes, brainstorming with them, understanding what's the problem day in, day out, solutionalizing with them. I think that really creates that very strong bond, the community component, and the value add that Endeavor can provide at that point of time. But fast forward, I think, so my journey, my middle of my career in Endeavor was, so COVID hit, right? So that was very tough for a lot of entrepreneurs. And that's where, servicing the entrepreneur changes quite a lot, remote servicing, and everybody was in a struggle. Even with our mentors, right? So that it creates a very strong, sort of like a collective in understanding, hey, sometimes the technicality of the business could not resolve because the problem is macro and it's global. Nobody has all the answers to the business struggle during that point of time. So we're able to gather a lot of people coming in, try to brainstorm. At the same time, I think what is amazing is that the psychological validation that you're not alone. We're all in this together. And
I think especially that we didn't know when it's going to end, right? It
Exactly.
was 2 weeks at a time, and you
Exactly.
never know, is it the next year or this year or what?
Yes. So so we weathered through. I think.
So you just it's just about like getting together and psychological, sort of like crying together, or
No.
what?
There was a lot of panel session roundtables and talking about what is business continuity planning and what does it look like for a big company and how the scale ups that we have in the Endeavor network can learn from those and what are those implementation can be deployed. And then you can start to see. I think you start to see the real leadership in the entrepreneur, taking very, very hard decision making, even the mentors themselves. So there was a fair amount of safe space. At the same time, there's also like, hey, this time it's really for founder to really shine. So I think Endeavor at large was also very, I think we come to the point that, hey, Endeavor cannot cater to a lot of people, cannot cater to those. I think not everyone is suitable for Endeavor at the point of time to go through the selection process. So that's where, towards the later stage of my career in Endeavor, I decided that, hey, we can help a lot of scale-ups or businesses. They are quite privileged because they can grow, right, and grow fast. And Endeavor is well suited for that. But no one is really talking about for those who we didn't get to accept into Endeavor. So that really sort of reminded me that, hey, what if you can really build something that caters for the startups, the people who are going through the 0 to 1.
So Endeavor was helping only the ones that were inducted, but the ones that weren't accepted, they are just basically totally on their own.
Correct. I think that is also I think to be fair to Endeavor, I think that point of time, I think a lot of ecosystem builder community out there was also at that state of selecting, qualifying people. Yeah, even accelerators themselves, VC themselves, right? Everybody's seeing sales dipping and everyone, so everybody didn't know what to do about it. So that gives me, a very good, I think, inspiration that, hey, if Endeavor entrepreneurs are facing all that and scale ups are facing all that, what, for the younger guys, for the smaller guys, it must be feeling very, very helpless. So that's what transitioning out, that's what I did. And that's how Guide was started. So before Guide, there was another name called Initiation Chamber Academy. That was the initial brand for it. So Alvin and I, we touched base again after we have left our previous career. And said, hey, I'm still very, very passionate about helping entrepreneurs. How do we actually help them? So we started off by being fractional I think C-level.
C-level, yeah.
Yeah, or senior management team that would be a sounding board and somebody who can put structures and systems together. And it is especially useful for entrepreneurs who are quite solo in the journey. And talent has been always the problem in this part of the world. So how do we, without a very high cost way, in also sharing our time and expertise for those who are going through that phase? So that's how Initiation Chamber Academy or Guide is founded on that premise.
Yeah, I have first-hand experience with that because if you remember, my co-founder, who happens to be my wife, she actually delivered my twins right around the same time when our investors actually wanted data room and wanted to do due diligence on us and stuff like that. And I actually remember, we had our first introductory call, and I really needed to put the team together because she was not in a place where she could actually play that role at that point in time. And I actually remember our first call. When I actually told you a statement that I believed, but didn't share it with many. So I basically told you, I believe it's not a matter of if we become a unicorn, it's just a matter of when. And I was very carefully observing your reaction to that. Like, is it going to be like a loud laughter or something like that? But actually, you actually totally believed me. And at that point, I really realized that, okay, I really need to work with this guy because we are already, vibing on that front. And then later on with your partner, Alvin, you were instrumental in helping me close funding. So thank you for everything you have done in that regard. So I want to ask you, before we jump into today's topic, like, you have spent much of the last, let's say, 10 years actually helping others. Do you feel that this is the story of your life? You are in the role where you empower others to do on their journey, or do you feel that at some point you are actually going to build your own venture, or is Guide your own venture?
Oh yeah, I think it was very interesting is that as I built Guide itself as a business is a business of helping other entrepreneurs. And we want to stay true with that because I think in this particular space, either you can swing on both ends. You either be too altruistic or too capitalistic. So the challenge of Guide has always been, how do we be a place, a sanctuary, at the same time, an educational type firm that allows entrepreneurs to take a risk, understanding their appetite, realizing they can do better, helping them along the way, and let them decide what kind of entrepreneur they want to be, and then to do it over and over again. So that's what Guide is all about. And I think we find a lot of joy and fulfillment in helping these entrepreneurs. It's not an easy work, right? We still have to do a lot of, the way we practice what we preach is to also level ourselves to what the founders are going through day in, day out, especially early stage. Because the valley of death is the matter of death, life of death, and survivorship. And we cannot, I think the most interesting hidden driver behind this is that we cannot charge arms and legs to the entrepreneur. But how do we figure out a model where we can help enough, and we can see the long-term impact of it? I think that's where we really vibe, and that's why you said, hey, these guys really believe in the entrepreneur as an individual itself. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd like to add a little bit in that. So back in 2017, me together with a group of consultant friends, we also created a mini consulting firm. In similar vibe. It didn't work out. I lost about probably 80,000, 90,000 on it. And that actually taught me a lot, because it's not so much that I can help. We also they also want to be helped. So like, for example, like more what you mentioned, right? It's like you need to have that mindset too, and both vibe, and then it can happen. But yes, I also agree that sometimes along the way, a lot of entrepreneurs come over to me and say that, why is no one helping us, especially the underserved? And sometimes we have to also share with them that it's not that we don't want to help, but we need time to figure out that model.
A scalable model that balances self-preservation with impact.
Exactly, and how to bring the cost down low enough so that we can help more. So I think that's if anyone's watching this, there are a lot of people trying to figure out the model, Please give us time. We'll get there soon.
So let's jump into today's topic then. So today we'll be comparing the differences between traditional venture builders like Nexia, Sunway iLabs, and of course Endeavor, which we mentioned, with the more recent players such as Guide, Antler, Pace by Artem. So I have actually divided into 5 main comparison points. So those are going to be focus and stage, program structure, public-private synergy, global versus local, and then finally the cost structure, which you alluded to earlier. Who pays the bill? So Neil, why don't you first walk us through an overview of the objectives and purpose of an early stage venture builder? Like, how are they different from, let's say, a university incubator or even just starting with trial and error with your friends?
I think the job of a venture builder is really bringing idea to validation, especially market validation, to prove there is a business behind the idea.
So you're trying to accelerate the path to the first paying customer?
Yes, I think the whole point is to reduce the mistakes of getting to the market, right? Because there's a lot of risk behind it, a lot of costly mistakes, and usually I think the concept of venture builder, it's done by a bunch of people that's very experienced, been there, done that, or have domain knowledge that can come together to resolve, to get to the point of idea to market and a proper P&L. So that's the concept of venture builder. I think the very first iteration or early iterations of venture builder are usually driven by corporates. So Guide operates at the founder level. So that is a slightly, I think, rather the big difference between how
It's day zero, basically.
correct, and how we actually company build together with the founders. So,
Okay, but day zero actually implies that you don't have to have figured out what is the best idea, best product. You don't even have a team yet. Yet we somehow gonna help you, get on your path. And whereas the more traditional venture builders, they're gonna say, for example, like in my case at Scale Up Malaysia, they say like you need to have like 300,000 in revenue first. So you're not gonna reach that point unless you have some kind of product market fit, as well as some of the others that we mentioned, Nexia, Sunway, iLabs, and Endeavor. I think even Endeavor, when I spoke to them, we didn't qualify. We were in the first 2 years, so we weren't at the threshold that we can even apply to be selected. So I think that is a fundamental difference already, that the new guys are more about day zero, and then the older ones are about the later stages. So we'll unpack that a bit more later. I'm just gonna give an overview of the 5 points. So program structure, traditional venture builders like Nexia, they provide long-term engagement from ideation all the way to exit. But of course, since they are involved for such a long time, they can't do it with thousands of companies. So they tend to focus on the companies that they actually select. And then similar to Endeavor, the ones that are not selected, okay, they need to go find the help elsewhere. Whereas programs like Pace by Artem and Antler, they are shorter and more focused on rapid validation and getting to the first iteration of product market fit or first paying customer. Public-private synergy. So there is different levels of public involvement in different programs. So I think Guide stands out with its public-private partnership approach. You somehow still want to have the public involved. So yes, you are helping the entrepreneur at day zero, but you do want the government to be involved in some way. So is that because the whole thing should, at the end of the day, fulfill, let's say, the master plan that is set by the nation itself, or is that somehow giving a stamp of approval, a credibility for the entrepreneur that would then get him through the door at maybe investors or something like that in the early days? So what is actually the philosophy behind getting the public side involved at such an early stage?
Sure. I think maybe I can rewind a little bit. So Guide actually also run our own startup program. We call it Guide Founders Program. Guide Founders Program is not structured in the very traditional 3 months duration. So we actually run a minimum of a year of commitment.
Oh, wow.
So instead of day one, we call it instead of day zero, we call it day one. Day one means is that you are a committed individual. You have left your job or you committed yourself into being an entrepreneur. You come to Guide and say that, hey, Guide, I think I'm ready to become an entrepreneur. So we ask 3 questions in how we actually select these founders. Usually they come with an idea, but we don't make a judgment on the idea itself. We let the market to do that. So we ask them, why do you want to become an entrepreneur? Because it's very, very tough. It's arguably way more tougher than you building your career in an organization, small or big. Then the second one, why do you think you have all it takes to become an entrepreneur? That's where we go down to the level, understanding if this person, even if they are actually attractive to be hired as a talent, can they actually build something with their own hands, close sales, or have some kind of social equity that is say that, yeah, I think I know who are my first believers. They are probably angel investors or probably a team they can put together. Then the third thing we ask them, do you have at least 12 to 18 months of runway? Because this journey is going to be very tough.
Indeed.
If you don't set aside on your savings, on your personal commitment, right, regardless of what that amount is, then you're not able to survive this period together with us. So then we put on a structure of 12 months to 18 months of process of helping them from all the programs we have, the curriculum, the community. And that leads to the community, the ecosystem part. We think entrepreneurs cannot thrive in isolation. There must be a strong component of cross-pollination within the program, within your cohort mates, and also people from the outside in the ecosystem. The reason why we do events is that then we can also bring our founders outside to the world and talk to people from different communities, right? At the same time, and our events are mostly learning as a core. And we also notice that is a gap in the event space. I think a lot of people do great networking events, award ceremony, but no one has going the level deep into, hey, can we put an event that's all about learning? So learn, network, and grow. So that was always our mantra in building events. And the reason why we also want to invite ecosystem players is because then this could be a multilateral type people. You get to see corporates. You get to see investors on one end. You can see individuals also going through the struggle or been through the struggle.
But I still didn't hear any role for government. So is there any government involvement? Or?
So we do invite Cradle, right? Cradle has been quite supportive of events. We've been actively involving them and so giving some, tickets for them to invite their founders across to our events. So yeah.
I'm currently involved with IQ Malaysia. IQ Malaysia is an overseas Malaysian student organization. And I first met them when I was in MDEC. And they were running their own startup accelerator. Not so much accelerator, but ideation. To build up find their team, build an idea, and then go for a sort of a demo day-ish. So, and I can see that actually the Malaysian government are actually quite supportive. They're working together with Cradle, working together with Talent Corp. And I also do see several listed companies working together with them. So comparing with last time back in 2017 and now, I think I kind of like where the direction is going. There is still progress because the day when magic went off, everyone was like crying, oh no, what's going to happen right now? But I can see, from the woodworks, passionate people like Neil go like, okay, let's piece things together and let's get it up again.
But one of the things we actually discussed on our last episode was that right now the startup ecosystem in Malaysia is 70% government funded and 30% private funded. And in my opinion, that is actually an alarming ratio. Not to say that we want the government to play a smaller role, but actually the 30% needs to actually expand. And then the role of government needs to be right size because the government just can't carry the whole thing from beginning until the end. If you look at Silicon Valley, yes, actually the government at the early days of Silicon Valley was the primary customer. Actually, they invited all the scientists to go there, and any inventions that they created were actually purchased by the U.S. government. But eventually, after 10, 20 years, it is actually the private capital that actually carried the flag until today. And I think also we saw in the last MBAN summit example of Korea, where it started off as 50-50 and then eventually government shrunk to below 5%. So do you think that this is actually what you're talking about, is having the government involved in the education and the community building rather than direct funding? That is, in your opinion, the ideal role for the government, or do you actually think that the Dana Impacts and Pinjana Capitals and all of these things are really actually the right way for Malaysia? Because of course maybe Malaysia is different from the US. Maybe here you do want the government on your cap table. Like for example, in my case, when I was talking to investors, some of the US based investors were like, oh, what, you want to take a like seed funding from pre-series A funding basically from a sovereign wealth fund. That would be very frowned upon in the US or Europe, because usually the government gets involved at the later stage, not at such an early stage. However, what I have seen is that having them on my cap table was actually an amazing door opener. They provide a lot of strategic value. So what are your thoughts on that? What is the role of the government? Do they have to directly fund, or is it just at the awareness and the education community building side?
Yeah, that's a great question. On my opinion, Malaysia, I think ever since, or even before independence, we have been very private sector driven as an economy. They are great families. The legacy of them has built the backbone of Malaysia's ecosystem. SME itself is the backbone of Malaysia.
Yeah, we have 1.1 million SMEs, and they produce 49% of the jobs, and they really contribute like 1/3 of the economy. So it's amazing, actually.
Exactly. And I think because of that, I think one message I really want to put it out is that we should really stop comparing to Singapore. I think Singapore.
And what about the US?
Yes. So I feel Malaysia may be more akin to US because of our exposure of the Western culture. We have a lot of access of their products and their services. And because we are so SME driven, we are capitalistic in a lot of ways. A lot of, I think the Malaysia society we are entrepreneurial driven, right? We have entrepreneurial spirit. But unfortunately, that didn't capture in the startup, I think, subset of the SME, right? So what I even would actually challenge is that the MBAN numbers may not reflect the entire private equity type investment, the very individual to individual pledging. We don't see that trap in the record.
Yeah.
Because I've seen that in SME, they are very vernacular focused, Chinese speaking community, Malay, or Indian, and the rest. So these are the things, the private equity money is moving at a very small micro scale, but wasn't captured at the institutional level. And that is the main difference between what we see from the top-down perspective and the bottom-up perspective. Liquidity might happen outside of the market, outside of the local domestic market. So for a very small, very centralized, very systematic economy in Singapore versus Malaysia, the system is just different. I think we really hope, I think it should be more privately driven. It should be privately more pronounced. I think Malaysian, I think also part of the whole Asian culture is that we are very humble, right? We don't want to brag about our wealth. That is good and bad in that. The bad is that we see more gloomy stories than, hey, we got a champion. And we also see sometimes social media can be very detrimental to somebody's success.
Is it because the story of like zero to hero, if once you become hero, you have a target on your back? Like I actually saw that in the case of, for example, the founder of 99 Speed Mart. Like the guy, like B40, handicapped, very tough background, didn't ask, the government for any handout or anything, just worked hard, grew his company, eventually did one of the biggest, actually the biggest IPO in 7 years, restored confidence in Southeast Asia public markets, and then like the next day criticizing him for the wages he pay or something like that, which is actually totally legal, right? So rather than going after the one who created the policy, maybe people are too scared to do that. So he's just an easy target that, okay, now you're a billionaire, maybe you should start paying people better or something like that. So this is not the topic for today, but why do you actually think that this zero to hero, suddenly that hero is not like in the US, like they make movies about you and books and now you are greeted by the president and things like that. But here, when you go through something like that, you are still being attacked. So why is that the life story of the entrepreneur in this part of the world?
I wish I have the answer, but I think it's really rooted in the mentality. I think, for example, right, great thing you pointed out, like maybe Hollywood, if they're ever to make these kind of story again, right, people take it as a sense of humor, right? But I think for a very social, tight-knit community, right, we are tend to, the control of PR is very, very tough. The media might write something grand about, the success of an entrepreneur, but in the community, there might be jealousy going on. I do not know the answer of it.
But jealousy, I think, implies that the person who's jealous, or the majority of whoever is jealous, doesn't believe that they can have such a journey. That's why they are jealous, because it's out of reach.
Yep.
So, what is then the role of Guide and similar entities to tell everybody in Malaysia that, guys, if you're not happy with your day job, your 9 to 5, and you have this bubbling idea and passion, and you see a problem in the world that you want to fix, and you think you're the best one to fix it, you can also have such a journey. So that is like a societal conversation that I think isn't happening. Even though we have PMX and everybody in government talking startups, KL want to be top 20, etc. So the top down is there, and I think the bottom up maybe is led by entities like Guide, maybe to some extent the Soonicorn Collective and so on. But still, I think they haven't converged. So the majority of society still didn't get the memo, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's also quite right, because like alluding to what Neil mentioned earlier, something that also talk about culture, right? Our part of the world tend to be less methodical, while Western cultures tend to be more methodical. And in the way they do, step 1, step 2, step 3, right? So recipe, they go like, 100 grams of salt. Okay, that's a bit too much. 100 grams of flour, 5 grams of salt. Here, agar-agar. Okay, then you get your dish out, right? So I think that's where, so if you want to create a little bit more entrepreneurs, I think we can learn a lot about how Korea create K-pop groups. They do have a method about it, right? 3 to 4 years, you have to train dance, singing classes and all that. And 4 years later, no matter who is it, well, pretty girl and all that, know how to sing. So I think we need to figure out our Malaysian model of that method. Once we nail it down, I think that is like it's like unlocking the dam, the reservoir, and then all the startups will come.
So this is a good segue actually to our fourth point, which is the difference between a global and a local network. So in my book, as I'm actually not from this part of the world, for me, tech startups are always looking for growth, and growth is enabled by technology. And it's also rare to see, for example, someone start in Singapore or even Malaysia for that matter and say, okay, you know what? The boundaries of my life are Malaysia. I'm never going to go to another country, blah, blah, blah. So that is, maybe a normal SME business, something like that. But in the circles that we hang out in, ideas tend to be born global, meaning that your idea should be scalable enough that it stands on its feet, maybe in not 200 countries in the world, but at least, another 5-10 countries. So what is the difference between the traditional venture builders, like Nexia, Sunway, iLabs, of course, Endeavor is more global, but the newer ones, what do you think? Are they local, or are they global, or what is actually happening there? Like, unpack that a bit for us.
Yeah, I think it's just like how you summarize the level of the domestic knowledge, experience, exposure, the network itself plays a very crucial value proposition. And I feel entrepreneurs that join the community may not know that is actually the underlying differences. So for Guy perspective, when we started off, I think Alvin and I, we were very, very lucky to have those exposure. And I think one thing we really want to do is that, hey, in the age of information, as an entrepreneur today, modern entrepreneurship, you are forced to compete with everybody around the world.
Yes.
There's no domestic or market, conceptually. So once you're out, you're competing somebody from China, somebody from Korea, somebody from Indonesia, Singapore, right, or US. So that creates a different level of ball game. If you decide to play whether you're in the red ocean or in the blue ocean at the beginning. So that actually builds our genetics into our curriculum. And I think for the traditional, communities, they are more SME driven. That is something that is lack of, which is totally fine. I think every entrepreneur has have different ambition, and the entrepreneurs set our own ceilings, right? So you are only as good as what you know. So I think that is also catered for different. We know there's this stage also EO YPO is also very active in the ecosystem. So for these kind of different communities, they have a different sphere of understanding what is enterprise is and the art and craft behind building one. So yeah, I think that's the main difference. I can't say it's suitable for everybody, so everybody has to be very objective in picking which kind of community they want to learn from.
Okay, understood. So our fifth point is cost structure. So at Antler, non-funded companies don't pay any fees, but once they are funded, they will be paying a program fee. Paced by Artem, no fees, no equity. The bootcamp includes an evaluation process where they basically select 30 companies, but then eventually only 3 of them would receive non-monetary benefits if they're essentially the winners of the cohort. At Guide, there is a participation fee, but it is often subsidized by program partners. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. One way we subsidize our program fee is through our advisory business model. So we enjoy doing the advisory model because that is the only way we get hands-on, our hands dirty in helping the founders we really believe. And sometimes we even convert some of the advisory fee into equity.
Yeah, like in my case, right?
Correct.
So welcome to my cap table.
So I think that's the amazing underlying values of being an angel investor. So we see ourselves almost like angel investor, but we're sweating for it. Like really, really do the job of how a founding team would be like, right? So then we use some of the proceeds from there that we're able to harvest or we're able to make from the cash flow from it. Then we subsidize the people who are going through the 0 to 1 journey. And yes, they do need to pay for it, but we gave them options, right? The usual payment option is installment plan, but the biggest, I think we call it an innovation from that business model is that, hey, we buffer you, we waive your first year of program fee, allow us to write you a simple agreement for future equity, capped at 1%, right? If there's any price round afterwards, then only will convert. So we're really writing something that we invest in your education with us, but you got to tag along. We don't quit on you. It's up to your choice whether you want to quit entrepreneurship. All right. So for that 12 months, you journey with us, building the product, getting the first sales in, hiring the first person, and you get to decide, hey, if you want to pay us back on the pre-agreed program amount, or you want us to stay with you until you exit, and we do this over and over again. So that is the essence of that program itself.
But I actually see some well-established venture capitalists, on your about page, and
Yes.
so on. So what is actually the extent of their participation? Like, for example, I know that at Antler, if you are actually part of the funded group in a particular cohort, they actually don't let you meet external investors yet. First, you have to meet their own circles of investors, and only if they pass, you are then free to go. Is there something similar at Guide, or is just that you're capped at 1%, but I basically can raise money from anybody, and there's no like first dibs in a sense for your affiliated investors?
Yeah, so we are VC agnostic. Even we have the co-founder of Gobi Partners, Tom, as our founding chairman. We really believe that, hey, there is education in venture building and entrepreneurship. So then I think it's the proximity and the independence of becoming an firm allow us to work with different other investors. Then we let the entrepreneurs and also the investors to pick the deals they want. Our job is to nurture the deal, right? Telling them, hey, investor A, we have this very interesting entrepreneur that might fit into some of your VC mandate or some of the risk appetite you think you might be very comfortable with. Take a look at it. We have written an IM, right, an investor memo for you. We'll tell them very upfront, this might be a deal might be ready, not right now, or that this deal might be very interesting for some of your portfolio company. There might be synergy on that level. So we have those kind of collaborative conversation with the general partners or the individual investors themselves. So they understand Guide is also watching out on their risk from that perspective. That allows us to work with any other investors in around the world, in fact. And they love us because we are the ones that help them to, to make a diamond out of the,
Many founders that I meet, quite a few do not know how the VC world work. And unfortunately, not many VCs also provide feedback after you pitch. So some people feel a bit lost, like, okay, I pitched and you said no. May I know why you say no so I can go back and get it sorted out, then I come back over to you. So I think what you are providing here at Guide is to provide that preparation before they go. Some preparation may take a few years, and it's not many things that can be solved within 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, I agree. So that was one of the things we discussed last time, is that zero feedback is really, really destructive to the entrepreneur enthusiasm.
Yeah, it also ties back to that, it takes a village to raise startups, right? So everyone have to play a role to get them progressing.
Right. Okay. So we've seen a lot of incubators and accelerators come and go. So what makes you think that Guide is here to stay? Like, why do you believe? I believe, but why do you believe?
Why do I believe? Because I don't see this as a job. Yeah. I think it is really my founder journey to help other founders. An amazing thing is that as I build companies together with the founders that are helping, I'm also building my own company. So that is the intrinsic alignment and commitment that I want to have for the rest of my life. And I think staying to that commitment really gives a lot of confidence on the people who are helping out. Because there's no other reasons for me to incentivize myself other than the founders that I help being successful. Right? And I have to go through that journey. Otherwise, it will be a total lie. Right? And I think that comes in that unique proposition. And I think a lot of founders actually resonate to that, especially the zero ones. It's like, hey, Neil is probably 1-2 step ahead, right? Just enough for us to also leverage on what he has and what he's able to put on the table. So then it's on, just like any founders, we try to figure out our own business unit economics. So right now, we're very, very frugal and very prudent about, hey, how do we stretch ourselves enough at the same time, provide the same value and service experience with the founders. We'll tell them where's our boundary. And right now, we are still building a lot of capabilities in-house. Like we just launched our 10-point brief, our newsletter to inform the entire, enterprise and venture ecosystem around Southeast Asia about what is very amazing about things we can learn in the enterprise world. We launched our startup Wiki. Right?
Yeah. I think this is the first time you speak publicly about it, right?
Yes.
I'm very excited about that. So walk us through.
Okay, so I think finally in the first time, I'm not sure in the Western world, but at least in Southeast Asia or Asia, there is a knowledge hub that's built by Guide, maintained by Guide, and will be ever updated by Guide to serve as a repository for startup founders that are going through the early stage in reading everything. But we started from one thing that has been quite a myth, which is venture capital, right? Because venture capital knowledge, usually you get it from media. And sometimes the media itself could not cover enough of the nuances on why certain companies are being backed. And everybody thought that, hey, fundraising should be the first thing I do in starting up the business. I should ask for money before I can actually build a business, right? So that creates a lot of confusion. We want to use the knowledge hub, the startup wiki, as a way to orient entrepreneur to what you need to know in a note form. So we have that, and it's publicly available.
It's like an instruction manual, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the methodology.
Primarily for funding, or includes everything. Also operational.
And
team building and everything.
Everything. Wow. So we want to put it on Wikipedia. This is open source knowledge. There is a certain component that's actually catered for some of our members. Okay. But there are a lot of tools already to give you started, and even arguably it can use as a syllabus for uni students to understand a bit of what is entrepreneurship and what venture is all about.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. So even though your programs have a cost, this is actually the cost-free
It's free.
component. Anyone can participate and knowledge can spread.
Yep.
So I still want to press a bit
Go ahead.
about the cost thing. Don't you think that, for example, a VC or a group of VCs that are seeking future deal flow, so once the ideas come through and they are a bit more polished, they have maybe a first customer or early signs of product market fit, then the VC has already observed them through the program, and now they have essentially done a bit of due diligence already, and they would be able to sweep up some early stage equity at very, very good valuations, which would then be good, of course, for their portfolios. Don't you think that such a player would be able to subsidize like almost 100% of the cost of your program? I mean, they would have the money, they would have the interest, but why isn't it happening? Why isn't the program cost free?
Yeah, I think ideally, I like how that is also one of the what you propose and what you mentioned is also something we really want to push that, right? If VC themselves will also behave as a more of an ecosystem builder, right? Seeding in knowledge will be a great way for VC to be more inclusive. So I think the benefit of us being independent and we are being VC agnostics, they are great partners in giving back knowledge. But when actually VC one day would actually say that, hey, Neil, guide, I will subsidize, I'll pay for scholarship for this bunch of people. I think we are still in a very early process of discussing it. A lot of, for example, now we are looking for sponsors for a lot of our events. The reason is because we see one way, I think the private industry would obviously want to get to know the people from our events, right? I think that's the outright motive of them sponsoring. But at the same time, we are towing the line saying that, hey, we know what it is best for the entrepreneur that we're able to attract. That is the education element to it. So we have actually convinced quite a lot of players who traditionally wouldn't actually do that in us now leading the curation process of it. Like, hey, we trust you because you know best in how to educate them. For us, we take a long-term approach, and education approach is now sales. So we think it takes time, I think, for VC to really accept the fact that they need to be more proactive in education. And I think the other end is that I think VC themselves in this Southeast Asia landscape is that I think VC economics is still fixing. I think, so Y Com can do it, right? Y Com and some of the folks in Silicon Valley can really do it is because maybe their carry or maybe some of the fund economics allows them to do that kind of education approach, especially when you're very, very early stage. So education is a point of you creating the most infinitely big funnel for you. But I think for this part of the world, we still try to figure out how their model can look like. Yeah.
So I know that, for example, you have a payment gateway as one of your sponsors for our upcoming event, and I'm actually surprised because, of course, I see the value that they would get from this, but since we are talking now about day zero and ideation stage, so I think I believe that they do this so that these entrepreneurs, once they become companies, they would use this payment gateway in their own operations, which seems like more distant than the role of a seed investor, because seed investor comes even earlier than that, before you've built your product such that you can use a payment gateway in the first place. And in a sense, once you use the payment gateway and you already have paying customers, in a sense, it might be that your valuation is kind of already quite high. So I would imagine that VCs or early stage investors can even come and play a role even before those market players. It just makes more sense to me, and maybe it's just a matter of time. So you're right that since they have LPs and they just, when they raise the money from their LPs, they didn't tell them, I'm going to take that money to run an education program for entrepreneurs so that I can get the future deal flow. They didn't say that. They just said, I'm going to take your money and put it in equity right? So if it's not equity, then they are not at liberty to use that money essentially. But on the other hand, I can still argue that that could be sort of like I don't know, come out of the marketing budget or scouting budget or something like that, because I know what your programs cost and what the tickets cost, and I don't see it as enormous amounts of money. So I would imagine that some VCs will still probably able to afford that from their own balance sheet.
Yeah. I also argue that LPs themselves, especially LPs that are government linked, need to relook into that as well. It's like, hey, yes, we may be fund managers, but because of our duty as a government-linked fund, there is an education, a bigger component has to be resolved before there is pipeline for our GPs to invest. So therefore, if LPs themselves can partner up with GPs to have an allocation for education, I think that will make wonders for the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think it's also to show that linkage, because if you can increase the general level of quality of entrepreneurs, it helps the ecosystem as a whole.
And
so
society,
actually
more
GLCs
jobs,
or
faster
governments,
companies.
you get your money back through taxes anyway. So that's the reason why you start a public school, right?
So my last question before I actually let Jason go through his questions, it seems to me like you are actually searching for a specific entrepreneur DNA, right? I don't know, the research says like 2% or 3% of society or something like that have that activated gene that makes people take risk and try new things. So wouldn't you think that once organizations like Guide have already filtered out, let's say, the 97, 98% who are non-activated entrepreneur DNA, and then found those 20, 30 people that have great potential, and you would know because you've already seen like hundreds or maybe even thousands of entrepreneurs come through, and you can tell probably by your intuition whether this is intuition as well as your observation during the program, whether this guy has it in them or not. Don't you think that this group of people now, because there is so much at stake and so much potential that they can achieve to the economy, to society, to job creation, and getting to KL top 20 in the world, and having 5 unicorns by 2030 or whatever, don't you think that this group of people now deserve more than maybe some others to be nurtured, to be invested in their education, and guide them through the early trials and errors?
Yes. So our ambition.
So right now you're still charging those 20, 30 people tickets, which I understand for now, but I'm sure there is someone out there who would say, oh, we found these 20, 30 future superstars. Let's just nurture them. Let's just spend money on them. It's just education fee, so it's not much. And then it will be returned in many multiples in the future.
True. I think let me answer this question in twofold. One, we do have a selection process for our Guide Founders Program, but the long-term ambition is to make Guide as inclusive as possible. Hence, we launched Startup Wiki. We have this 10-point brief newsletter. It's all free. The point is that we want to get to the point of zero rejection policy, inspired by the education revolution. So when zero rejection policy means everybody stands an equal chance to become an entrepreneur, to build some value into a business entity. I think right now at this point, we can only afford to be a little bit more selective and also be more conscientious in what kind of questions we ask and how do we actually encourage people when we actually reject them. Hey, so going back to the 3 questions that I asked, right? The point of us asking the question, other than for our decision-making process, is also for them to think twice about why they're getting into. Are they getting into this entrepreneurship journey in the wrong motivation? And then, so that's the first part. The second part is that.
So what would be the wrong motivation for entrepreneurship? Get rich or become rock star in your neighborhood, or what is actually the wrong motivation?
Because it seems more easier than my current job that I don't like. Because I don't like my boss.
So I'm bored, basically.
Yeah,
so
feels
this
more
is something
easy.
more exciting.
Yeah, they want a quick gratification.
Okay.
Yeah. rapid gratification. I think the new age of social media and hyping up startup founders have created a culture of rapid gratification for entrepreneurs. It seems like building an entrepreneurial journey and being a startup founder
Is romanticized.
Yeah.
We try to de-romanticize on this podcast.
So I want to
right?
tell them the reality, right? Tell them the reality. This could be very tough. It's gonna break some of your relationship mentally. If you don't take care of certain fundamentals, if you're financially not ready, if you do not know yourself enough to create value, because you might be very comfortable in a organization setting. You always have friends, you have resources, have budget, right? You've never been before in a situation you need to ask for money. But as an entrepreneur, you gotta on one hand you gotta ask for people's money, on the other hand you offer people value in exchange. So that it forces someone to see entrepreneurship all differently when they actually started this journey. And we actually want to pack all that in that conversation. And we tell them the reasoning why we do that. Not to demotivate them, but just telling them when you're ready, come back to us.
Yeah, it's also important because like people used to say they are producers and they're consumers. All of us are born consumers, right? So, and people like Amazon, they try to reduce the 4Ps and 4Cs, right?
Yeah.
So make it as convenient for you, as cheap for you. So, and of course, nowadays it's like if you want it, you get it on demand, right? So I think on a cultural scale, fewer and fewer people appreciate that starting something requires time, right? So I think that is in terms of the wrong motivation, right? If you think that, as long as I got money, as long as I got people, as long as I got the product, boom, I got a $1 million business tomorrow. I think that's something that we need to address, right? And usually I share with people, it takes about 2 years to get from operational break even. And I think that's something that we should share a little bit more, because it always breaks my heart to see someone having a lot of passion. He got the resources, but yet because the foundation isn't solid enough, right? And then he lost in 1.5 years. And I go like, if only you prepared a little bit more to reach that 2-year mark, you have got it.
But do you believe in the zero rejection policy? Do you think that is even should be a thing, or should we just tell the rejected individuals, go to the wiki, go to the newsletter, go to the podcast, and don't come to the program, waste your time, right? What do you think? And then I'll see what Neil thinks.
Yeah, I think that's the essence of zero rejection policy, meaning that no matter what happens, I can still direct you to somewhere. So if you're not ready for the program, go to the Startup Wiki. And they so I didn't reject you technically in that way. You're still in the system. So Neil, I wanted to ask you a little bit. From my journey, I since 2016, 2017, I've met quite a few entrepreneurs, because back then Magic was there. We all just go there and hang out, right? And along the way, I see there is one group of entrepreneurs that always get support, right? Especially if you got traction, everyone wants to come to you and help you out. And there's another group of entrepreneurs who somehow being left alone and no one wants to touch them. The trope has always been, if you're not a tech startup, please don't come here, that kind of stuff, right? So what do you think about this group of, maybe just give it a term, underserved entrepreneurs? Sure. What do you think about where Guide is and with them?
So Guide doesn't have we don't differentiate whether you are a traditional SME or a startup. It doesn't really matter to us. And even it doesn't really matter to us if you want to be or you don't want to be a venture-backed company. Those were not part of the questions. You get to decide where you want to seek for growth financing. And to the point that you realize you want growth financing, you come to us and you ask, hey, Neil, should I consider VC, venture debt, angel investor? What are the difference? How this all works? That's where it's covered by the bank.
But did you mean underserved, meaning on the individual level, like can't afford to come or lives far away, or what do you mean by underserved actually?
Maybe to put it in so I'm borrowing the terms from the financial industry, right? So they call it underserved people.
Yeah.
Right?
So who what define that? What do you mean?
It could be a combination of they're just too far away from the ecosystem, or it could be in another way that you're not in my focus area. That could also be another way of being underserved because you're not in my focus area.
Probably like a social enterprise, right?
Yeah.
Could be one. So
Yes.
Guide also actually collaborate. So that's where the multilateral ecosystem building efforts are. We actually collaborate with some social enterprise association because we realize that this same company building knowledge can be applied to not just for-profit companies, but non-profit as well, or those who are in the middle, the social ventures themselves. So we don't discriminate anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur, but there is some readiness psychologically and also financially, you as a person. So how you want to drive it as a micro SME entrepreneur, a medium size, you cap your own ceiling of success, or you whatever financing point of time comes, the startup wiki can guide you, or you will just want to make a very profitable business at that scale of size. Yeah. So that's something still very open for us.
Yeah, I think I can see, there's a lot of things that can go inside Startup Wiki. Sometimes I run panel sessions, and there was one particular panel session where someone asked me like, what are the different types of fundraising out there?
Yep.
And I go, oh, there are about 6 to 7 types. And everyone go, huh? I only know ECF, Angel, and VC.
And grants.
And grants, right? So what are the other types and all, right? So, and I think that knowledge gap might have been the biggest blocker right now, because if we talk about effort, everyone got the effort. No, I'll wake up at 7 in the morning or whatever and do whatever needs to be done. I will hustle all the way. And I think that
If you don't know what you don't know.
you don't know what you don't know exactly, right? So, and then it's like recently I was, I always like to use cooking because cooking is quite similar to entrepreneurship. At the end of the day, you come out the dish, right? And there are so many ways you can go around doing it. So right now I got an air fryer. I don't have an oven anymore. And I'm going like, how can I do back the same thing with an air fryer, right? So, and I think it's quite similar to a startup because I think we tend to get boxed down a lot into labels, right? And like what you mentioned just now, I'm a for-profit startup, so this is the way of doing it. I'm the other one. So
It's a benchmark to success.
exactly. So I'd like to ask you, what do you think in terms of how much of the techniques are transferable across the different types of startups?
I think the syllabus that we have can be transferable to all types of organization. So our syllabus is built for early stage, going through from the point of you wanting to become an entrepreneur. So we center it around more career building because it's a lifestyle choice to become an entrepreneur. And once somebody is committed to it, most likely they will be entrepreneurial for the rest of their life.
It's like a button that you
Yeah,
can switch
it's
on.
just
You render yourself unemployable, basically.
yeah. You rather work for yourself, right? Or you want to work with your clients. So from that point of view, the psychological readiness is there, and that is the first germinating seed of someone want to take a risk. Then we actually teach about the risk aspect of running a business. So we have something called a 4 venture risk framework that underpins our entire syllabus. So one is market, second is capital, product, and operation or execution. So no matter what, regardless of your stage of company, where you are at this point in time, you always look for the demand in the market. You're finding ways to build something you can fulfill. And then you're looking for capital, whether it's your own capital or other people's capital. So we teach them how to just like, it's an analogy of, it's impossible for you to do adulting if you do not know how to manage personal finance. For us, in order for you to become an entrepreneur, you do not know about risk management. So we start from that individual level. You want to build this career, come build it to us with Guide. And this can be a perpetual process. There's no graduation point for Guide to found the program. That's why we do events. And it's the point of view, hey, this time around, if 6 months doesn't work, or at the 18-month point of time, it doesn't work in your first venture, do not quit. Come back again, right? Or go take a break, be an intrapreneur. Stay within the innovation and venture ecosystem. You probably join a bigger corporates and try to figure out how do you transfer that skill sets back to that to add value in your job.
Can we talk a bit about failure rate though? Like how many that have participated in one of your programs are now like inevitably failing or have quit already and go back to their jobs?
So far, none. Out
Wow.
of the 6 that we actually accepted last cohort in March, all of them still running their business.
Any of them raise any funding or at least have paying customer?
So one of them they've already made revenue, so they're revisiting
Wow.
using the startup model. One of them raised their angel round. The other one actually go back to their is a second gen company. So she actually joined her own family, and uses this knowledge to rebuild some of the business itself. The remaining ones are still building the product, iterating it, still reaching out. So you may see them also participating in some of the ecosystem programs, like for my startups and whatnot. So they are also searching for this validation phase. So so far still survive.
Yeah, I think the second generation entrepreneurs is rising, with our parents leaving down behind. Sometimes when I go to the Wantan Min store, I go like, hey, why is it totally different? Then, my son and my daughter don't want to take over the business kind of thing, right? So, and I want to ask you about something a little bit before joining the program. So we talk a lot about readiness, right? And I do, personally, I feel that someone should gain a little bit of working experience, rather than just straight out of uni, that kind of thing. Because certain company processes is you have to live through it before you understand. So in a company, there's a hierarchy. It's entry level, and then there will be a supervisory level, a managerial level, and let's say the last one is a C level where you do strategy and all that. So of these 4 levels, where do you think that an entrepreneur should at least have gone through that level before they consider becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, great question. So that was the notion that our current education system has sort of put forward for us. And
That it's linear, that you have to go through step
that
one,
you
step
have to
two,
work
step three.
first, then become an entrepreneur, so you're more backable, right? The chance in P&L. So that was actually one of our initial concept when we interviewed our first cohort. To our surprise, actually I think someone from Harvard, actually a graduating student in the Harvard Medical School, actually applied to our program. We accepted him despite him having 0 working experience. It's how you deal with people that matters. How do you form a team? How do you convince your client believing you and able to deliver the value you promise? Right. So that is something we saw in this young aspiring entrepreneur want to become, hey, Neil, I want to solve this because, back in my hometown in Myanmar, right, these are the public health system gap that I really want to solve like that. I got some Harvard scholarship that able to extend my stay in Boston. And I'm returning back, in Cambridge. I'm returning back, I want to understand about the Asia way of building a startup. So can you actually coach me? So that is how he joined. And he's actually the only one is without a working experience. I've been very, low profile about it because I really want to see. And this morning we have just like 3 hours of texting WhatsApp. It's like, trying to ask a lot of questions regarding, hey, does Asia VC needs to always, need to have traction? Do they believe in letter of intent, right? So these are little stuff that we actually coach him through office hour that helps him to actually think like somebody have gone through certain working experience. That is the shortcutting of the whole working experience. So we think he is brilliant enough to survive, even though this may not be the venture that he may be able to build out of it, but I'm sure he will be so much more mature. I think kids right now in university themselves, they're talking just like how we are talking about the future, right? They're building things that we're able to build. So arguably, right, do we still need the current education and the work format? Maybe we do not need that.
So
That's the future of work.
So you were saying that even if they don't have, but it has to be covered with real-time accessible mentors to bridge that gap.
Yeah, or some kind of a societal experience, right? They may be volunteered in some organization before. They pick up some project management stuff, intern before. Right?
So it seems like one of the key point of an entrepreneur that he has to be proactive enough to know what he don't know and quickly fill up that gap.
How does guide's role differ pre-investment and post-investment, and maybe a few words about what is the mode that the entrepreneur should switch to after they have secured their first external capital.
Okay. Yeah, you probably already know we have two pillars, program and advisory. The way we structure these two pillars is also, it aligns to pre-investment and post-investment. So the working model, so when you got backed by somebody who believes in you and there's a significant stake, that person would actually also be actually quite comforting to know that, okay, God is helping you out. So that creates also a comfort zone between the founders and us, and also understanding we will work together to provide the investment back to the investors. So then our model becomes more advisory, more special projects. So we go in the company depending on the needs and the wants of the founder. Sometimes we are not as involved, or sometimes there is a certain kind of service being needed to be rendered. Right? We don't do everything. So Guy is not capable in everything under the sun.
Not scalable, right? Because you have a small team.
So
anyway.
we actually refer them to people, professional service provider, that can actually do things way more better than us, right? We just come in, scope it out, and contextualize things that we identify. Hey, this can be done by an accounting firm.
Like a GP doctor.
Exactly. Yeah, we try it together with the founder. Then we also run something called a Chief of Staff School. So the Chief of Staff School is a very unique program, a standalone program that to resolve the talent gap that we think is generalist enough and strategic enough to mimic our capability, me and Alvin, and tag along with the founder. This person is so unique. They are not vertically, they're not specialists and specialized in any
jack of
function.
all trades, basically.
Correct. But they understand the organization at that point of time, and they can really fix up things that otherwise especially wouldn't. And we realized that key role has been traditionally called GM, I think a CEO office, a manager, to that extent. So I think Chief of Staff is something is very unique, and that can actually, so that is also what we specialize in. And also we bridge the gap that is existing, outsource things that already in the market that has companies are doing that. But we help them to contextualize that. And then towards the point of time when that particular talent needed to be in the company in the full time, then we help the founders to actually search and place them in the company, so that the founders wouldn't feel that hiring will be much of a risk. But because Guide have already built that understanding into that particular talent, that the founders also will be very comfortable in having in the long term.
Yeah, both sides, so you can
exactly
kind of
we can
matchmake,
mediate, and facilitate that process.
Yeah, and I can see that. I may have put it this way. So, the way I look at it, based on my own personal experience, a business is made up of the technical brain and the business brain, for lack of a better word. And I believe that every founder, they are the experts at their product, right? They should focus in. No one can take it away from them. They saw something, and then they have to go out and get it solved. And what I think from an investor's point of view, they would like the founder to be so focused on that, and then people like you guys can you help him fill in the rest of the blanks, right? So that he can just keep going at that level. So doesn't that sound a little bit like building a business infrastructure, something like that, infrastructure as a service, but a very unique kind of.
Yeah, it is. In fact, our slogan for our Guide Founders program is called Mastering the Craft of Building Companies Together. So, from the genesis of a company being probably one person or a team of co-founder, you sort of have to recognize, what you are actually good at in optimizing your time and doing something you're very good at. And then you need to leverage on your co-founder in doing something you may not be very good at. But for solo founders' journey is that then you're forced to hire, or you rush.
Find a co-founder.
Or find a co-founder.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of, so from a Guide perspective, we don't rush solo founders to find your partner immediately. Because we've seen this process, if done in a rush, it can be very detrimental. You rush into a process of giving equity. Like, hey, this 30%, this 40%, or whatever amount. But then you realize down 3 months, 6 months, when business model pivot, the talent or the capabilities of the co-founder can put on the table, there is a mismatch with the business model because things are so volatile. Then the breakups happen, or somewhat the incentive wasn't aligned. Then the breakup becomes very ugly. We've seen, there are companies who set a new entity just to move away that early co-founder. So we are very against in rushing it. We think that process is a very organic process.
So do you think like at Antler it is rushed because it has to happen within the program? Otherwise, you don't even get to pitch to become funded?
But I've seen there are co-founders that are able to match through that kind of.
No, I'm sure it works. I
Yeah.
mean, they've invested in like in hundreds or maybe
Yes,
thousands of companies.
yes,
So
yes.
I know it works, but I guess you are talking about the instances where it doesn't work. So because you have to find a co-founder, you have to come up with the idea during the program. Otherwise, you don't get a chance to get funded.
Yep.
So that puts you in the pressure cooker. That okay, I actually don't like that guy, but what can I do?
Let's get the money.
Because
Yeah.
I need a CTO.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because that is
Exactly.
the investment mandate. They believe in, yes, I think statistics do show that most of the business have some form of one or two co-founders along the journey, or there are a previous generation of co-founder who left and then new co-founder joining the company. That's very normal. But there's a very generalized and lack of nuances around all this. So yeah, that's why it forms a lot of thesis of VC investors. You have to come in with a co-founder, otherwise we will not back you. That's an easy way to write check.
You have something? Or? No. How does an entrepreneur sift through the noise? Because right now it seems to be so many players, right? And I think we, because we are an entrepreneur-centric podcast, I would even argue that entrepreneurs need to be like they can't do every program, right? Because I also did many programs, and I think the only ones that I really benefited from were actually the ones that gave me money, like Scale Up Malaysia, or they have some strategic value. They give me stamp of approval from the government, which then opens doors for me to clients or something like that. But how does an entrepreneur sift through the noise and make sure that they are not wasting their time? How would you do it? Like, I'm an entrepreneur. I want to do startups. Do I join, a Pace? Do I apply for Antler? Do I call Guide? Or do I then call one of the old? What can I do? How do I do? And these are not the only ones. There's others as well.
Yeah, how do you navigate across the noise, right? I think you got to ask the right questions. You got to know what's your priority. Is my priority being funded immediately with an idea? Probably then you have to join an accelerator who have investment behind, right? If your priority is to learn, then probably Guide will be the best choice. Or you want a bigger community, then you join Soonicorn, right? You just want a safe space to be able to share your idea, hang out and understand, to navigate better. Then those are very community-centric. There's no money-related stuff, right? So I think a lot of entrepreneurs are very confused because a lot of programs out there also promises a lot of things. It's like, hey, we can fund you, we can connect you and whatever, but they may not necessarily able to execute all of them at the highest quality. So you got to ask people who have joined that to cut short your journey, because you are so limited amount of time. Every hour you put into program is 1 hour less in you running your business.
Exactly.
Right? Or closing a sales.
Like in market, we say that this person to sort out all this, right, is a regulator. Should we have a regulator for the entrepreneurship scene? What do you think?
That would be ideal.
I think self-regulation, though.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I think calling out the bad actors or the time wasters
Yes.
From within the community would actually self-regulate the ecosystem, because you're absolutely right. I have been through an accelerator program that actually, looking back, it was a decelerator. It wasted so much time. It started to put us, through some abstract learning about, theory of change or whatever. And we, at that time, already were scaling our revenues and, signing up our first clients. I even remember, my co-founder always blames me for this, that at some point during the program, we had like a very big client, a multinational company, sign up. And then they were like making a lot of bookings, for our company during that time. So I actually used to like skip the sessions of the accelerator, because I actually have a paying customer that needs my service, right? So the program wasn't helpful at all, and yeah, I'm glad to say that this organization that ran that program no longer exists. So
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
yeah,
I think
but
you get to sense as an entrepreneur, you know whether the program it's run on their own selfish reasons or they are running for the benefit of the entrepreneur. You can sense through the words they say or what kind of question they ask in the application.
But I will counter against that. Like, we know because we've been around for a long time. But for people who don't know what they don't know, they can't possibly figure it out.
That is true. Hence, you gotta really ask around. You gotta really ask
Yeah,
around.
it's so important to have friends, right? That's already you can't solo too long. You need to know someone. Then the next question would be, where do you go to find those someones?
True.
Yeah.
so Neil, we could talk for hours about this. It's very cool topic, but maybe give us some parting words for our audience about what is the thing that you would like them to remember of this episode, and how can they make the most out of Guide, and then maybe also how they can make the most out of the open source knowledge, the wiki and this podcast and so on.
Okay, I think one key takeaway, I think drawing into my entire career journey in helping founders. I think I really basically I built my entire career journey on helping founders. What you really need to know is that you are always in control of your business until the point you are not, meaning you seek out for different partners or getting people onto your cap table. And failure and success is always your own definition. It's okay to be not venture backed. It's okay to be not under the limelight, so don't seek for vanity reasons. I think for what I think Guide is really out there to help you to navigate a little better, find yourself, find a better footing to de-risk yourself. We help to de-risk you, we help to de-risk the investors. I think that makes you very, very attractive as an investment product. And so, yes, I think there's a lot of open source initiative we are doing, not just the events itself. We are very committed to do that. So far, we weren't committed to bi-monthly itself. Yeah, we want to really push down our cost to it, especially working with different community partners. And people really believe in this mission. Start Wiki is always there. We'll be ever updating, evergreen. Guide Founders Program currently is still on the cohort application basis, but moving forward after this cohort, we want to move into as and when rolling, and we want to break it into. So the teaser here is that we want to break into multi-tiers. So for every entrepreneurs learn very differently. We realize we spend a lot of time in studying entrepreneurs how they learn. They just love having office hour with Neil. Like, sit down with Neil, and then they can, it's part safe space. I don't have to give any answer to them. Then themselves derive into that to that answer they're seeking for. So they cherish that. Some really wants the content itself. Like, hey Neil, can you send me this, that? Can you tell me more about this? There's a case study we also prepared. So we started our case building and case writing process as well. So that is something new. Ecosystem building events. So there are entrepreneurs who love to learn through events because they get to network. That's the second benefit, second derivative and biggest benefit for them. So because of that we're breaking into multiple tiers. So if you don't like to see me, you can always learn through our community platform. So we have a dedicated community platform we're launching soon. We're testing on the upcoming cohort. So that's how you can learn and access through Guide. And Guide is also connected to all other different ecosystem builder. So we want to make you feel plugged into the entire ecosystem and leverage on our network to be much more successful, cut short your journey of expensive mistakes.
Jason, any final words to our viewers?
Well, I think that so I can share a little bit framework because I'm a framework guy. To build a successful startup, you only need three things: knowledge, your effort, as well as the last bit is resources. So everyone got 24 hours a day, so you can put in as much effort as you want. Knowledge is somewhere where you can find Neil go to Startup Wiki or go join any other groups. You can get it from there, but preferably you get it in a codified syllabus manner. So at least you don't leave out important bits as you go around. And in terms of resources, if you are starting up, please get 2 years at least of runway. If you have all these three together, it is very unlikely that you will fail, because the only time you will fail is only when you give up.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. I really enjoyed this episode. And I would like to remind our listeners that the opinions, views, and content expressed on the Soonicorn Nation podcast are those of the entrepreneurs and guests featured and do not reflect the official policies or positions of Proficio Consultants, Pinjana Capital, or the rest of the Soonicorn Collective. Remember, in the entrepreneurial journey, the quality of your allies matters more than the quantity of your advisors, because not all guides are created equal. Seek out the ones who are invested in your success, not just those with mere opinions to share. Until next time at Soonicorn Nation.